And all Robs, we're back with The Witch and the Priest by Hilda Lewis, a novel based on the true story of Joan Flower, the infamous 17th century witch. I have a hard time believing I'll finish this in the next 5 days since it's 270 pages and I'm only on 57, but we'll see if I can do it. Not, it will have to be put back to the list, the pile. Chapter 5. Are you afraid, priest, that you pray so long in your church and shun the empty cottage by the dark wood and shun the comfort of your own room? He was sitting in Hester's parlor, holding the skein of her wool, for she was knitting him warm stockings against the winter. From the floor, the little cat raised a paw and scrabbled at the wool. Down, naughty one, Hester said, and tapped it lightly. She did not see how the cat glowered at her with red eyes. Presently, Hester said, shivering a little, such a house for drafts, pardon. I never knew. Here we are almost into June, and I must get me a shawl. It was when the door had closed behind her that he heard Joan Flower's voice, saw her eyes openly mocking. Are you afraid, priest? She asked again. Yes, he said, I'm afraid, not of you, but for you. I pray for your soul. Then it is for me to be afraid, she said quickly. I had rather be with the master than with God. Hester came back hurrying, the shawl awry about her shoulders. Jeanette, the silly creature, has lost one of our grandfather's spoons, and I must find it at once, she told him. What a pother. What a pother? What a pother. Find it tomorrow. He put out a hand to keep her. He was in no mood for the witch. Tomorrow is too late, Hester said, and was gone. He heard Joan Flower laugh again, and knew that the loss of the spoon was a magpie trick to get Hester out of the way. She walked across to the spinning wheel and stood flicking at it with her fingers so that the wheel turned lazily and stopped. I was never a housewife, she said. When I see this thing, I am content to be a ghost. She struck the treadle a violent blow with her foot so that the wheel whirled viciously. Have a care, he cried out, but the damage was already done. He came over to the wheel and, taking the snapped ends, began to splice them. When he had joined the wool to his satisfaction, he said, living and dying are part of the same thread. I have snapped my thread, she told him. It may be mended again. How shall it be mended? One joins white to white, or red to red, or, as you have done, gray to gray, color to color. You cannot join white to red. Though your sins be scarlet, he reminded her, and said no more. In the silence there was nothing but the ticking of the clock and the crackling of the fire, and the little sound of the cat dragging her claws over the wool of Hester's rug. There's a thing I cannot understand, he said, breaking silence at last. You sold your soul that you might be forever young, but if you did not grow old, it was because you died first, died horribly. That I died as I did was my own fault. I broke my pact and denied my master. He had promised you all good things besides beauty and power. The things he promised he gave. Beauty, I knew it as the Sabbath. Power, I held it in my hands to make or mar, to kill or cure. Such power is from God alone, he said. You know better than that, priest. As for your God, he too promises all that heart can hope. Yet there is misery, and yet there is sin, and men and women hate each other. Innocent creatures come to the rope, and little children die in torment. And you, what do you say? The ways of God are passing strange, and strange indeed they are, or you will say God's ways are not our ways, and certainly they are not the devil's ways. For the Master's ways are clear to be seen, and his promises easy to understand. Then tell me this, he said very quick. When he promised you wealth, why were you so poor? So poor that you must hire yourself out for work. So poor that when there was no work, you must steal or starve. Heaven helps those that help themselves, she laughed. So it is with us. When I ask for meat and wine and fine white bread, the master said, it is yours for the taking. Take it then. Meat and wine stolen from your master, he said. Meat and wine given me by the master. It was a good life while it lasted. A good life. And he remembered again the sound of drunken laughter, curdling the peace of the quiet night. Your house was a scandal, an open sewer. You Christians find it hard to be merry. Scandalize. They scandalized my name and spat when I passed, but I had worked no harm as yet, and I had done them some good. You proposed evil. You purposed evil, or is it proposed? You were at the unholy Sabbath. You adored the devil, blaspheming the sacred rites of our religion. They were the sacred rites of my religion. You drank human blood, ate human flesh. You should not believe all you hear. We drank good wine, Malmsey, as I remember, good beef and mutton too, and pork besides, such as you eat, but better, for we stole it and took our choice. But she sent him a sly sidelong look. It is not of those small sins you wish to hear. It is about my Lord Earl and his lady, and about the children, how they came by their death. But that is the story you have heard. Was not the confession made, the punishment given? And is not that enough? Enough? No, he said, you have made no confession. As for me, I need that. Understanding which is the beginning of charity. I looked from the outside, and it was all wickedness. But if you will help me to look within the heart, then the black thing may not be so black after all. We talk of murder, two young children. She sat down on the stool at his feet and settled her skirts. The room, seen clear through her transparency, made the homely movement strange. We begin then with the Earl and his lady, she said. Good Christian souls. Surely you should have spared them for that. Priest, use your wits. The better the soul, the more merit to destroy it. And yet I think I should never have done what I did, had it not been for Margaret. It is a strange thing. Meg had a mean soul, good neither to God nor devil, one might think. Yet, in the end, God chose her for pardon. The stone that the builders rejected has become the headstone of the corner, he reminded her. If such is Meg to be cornerstone, then your heaven is likely to fall about your ears. Surely it is folk like my Lord Earl and his lady that are the cornerstones of God, fine folk, serviceable to rich and poor alike, to all the same gentleness, to all the same kindness. Such goodness is hard for a witch to stomach, and yet there were times when I forgot my witch's heart. And yet you murdered her children, and yet my witch's heart remembered again, remembered that though she was great, yet I was greater. For she served the new, pale God, but I served the dark God, the old God, and if, when I asked, she gave freely, or without asking gave, I did not count it to her for righteousness, seeing that all that I did not count it to her for righteousness, seeing that all she had was mine if I chose to take it. Sometimes I would go to the castle only to be near my lady, for goodness draws the wicked with a thread, and we cannot keep away. I would pretend that I went only to work. I would polish a little, or scrub, and I would give a hand in the wash house. But indoors or out, I did not work overmuch, and if there was a thing, I fancied I would slip it in my pocket, and if I did not fancy it, I wouldn't take it also. For one must do one's evil where one can. But whatever was lost in the castle, there was no complaint made. That was my lady's will, and all was quiet and pleasant, which did not suit me at all. Sometimes I would say to my lady, if it is such a one has stolen your riband or your fan, but always she would blame her own carelessness, or say one of the children had taken it in play. But it is easy, maybe, to be kind in such a house with its high rooms and its great hearths, and send out warmth in winter, and no soot to choke up your breath, and its wide kitchens, and its full larders, and its rich hangings, and its soft beds, and the presses full of fine clothes, and its pictures. I would stand, if I were let, cloth in hand, staring at them, as though I could never be done looking, for that was always a marvel to me, and a mystery how, with a few strokes upon a piece of linen, a man may bring forth angels and devils and men and women, yes, and trees and flowers and rivers too, and whatever the eye sees. You have but to stretch out your hand, so it seems, to touch flesh, or leaves, or clear water. St. Peter weeps. Once, indeed, I did put out a hand, and brought it back again, and was surprised to find it still dry. And there was a great picture it was, as you might say, a patchwork, seeing it was made of many little ones, and with a little saying for each. I would stand and I would look at it, one little bit at a time. That picture was like a great book in which one might learn. He nodded. I like it too. It is from Holland, and we call it the proverb picture. A proverb, you know, is a wise saying. It is strange, priest, I am a ghost, and all the sorrows of this world and the next one upon me. Yet I cannot forget that picture, for it taught in a merry way. And she laughed now, thinking of it, and one could remember its sayings, if one were wise enough, and she stopped laughing. There is one, he told her, gentle, and it is called labor in vain. Did you never look at it? She nodded. My lady told me the words. Two old women try to wind flax from the same spindle, but they pull in opposite directions. Such a piece of nonsense. Or a piece of wisdom, he said, grave. Are you not, perhaps, that flax? Then neither God nor devil pulled hard enough, he heard her sigh. There is another picture, and underneath it says, I remember my lady's words. If you're born to be hanged, then you'll never be drowned. There is a man struggling in the deep river, yet he need not struggle so hard. He will not drown. The gallows await him on the other side. That is not a merry picture. It cuts too near the bone. For so it is with witches. You swim us, but you cannot drown us, and we hang instead. I did not think then that Meg and Philip would come to the gallows. It is a warning picture, he said, but you would not be warned. There is another that might have warned you too. It is called Holding a Candle to the Devil. She nodded. That I would look at often, holding a candle to the devil. That is a thing we witches do. Though not in the way the picture shows. I could never pass the picture, but I would remember our own candles burning blue in the black night, and the master standing before us, the flame between his home, and I would remember the feasting and the dancing and the singing, and the way we made love under the bushes until for longing I could barely contain myself beneath the noontide sun. Again she saw distaste in his face. She said urgent but not ungentle, until you can understand that, priest, the joy and the laughter, you can understand nothing, for our lives here are hard and narrow, and there is little laughter, but how should such as you understand? You who live well in a warm house with good clothes upon your back and fine food within your belly. All the wood we gather cannot keep us warm within our houses, for there is no place to store, nor to dry it, and the little heat there is runs away through the holes in our roof, and the room is bitter with smoke. If rain does not put the fire out altogether, and our backs go bare and our bellies empty. But at the Sabbath, as the Sabbath, we are kings and queens. You are not a poor woman. You are not a poor man, priest. You live well enough. But neither we at our feast, nor you here in this house, eat as they eat up at the castle. Were you in the kitchens, you would stare until your eyes grew upon stalks. I have dined there, he reminded her. That is not at all the same thing as seeing it all laid out in the pantries and in the kitchens, shelf upon shelf, table upon table, the pork, the beef, the lamb, the mutton, the capon, the duckling, the teal, the bittern. But poor folk must make do with an ancient hen if they are lucky, or a piece of pickled mutton. And up there you will see also barbel and bream and porpoise, oysters and trout. But for us there are herrings, and maybe now and again a handful of sprat. And you will find fruits there and spices, dates and figs and cinnamon and ginger. And in the gardens there are peaches and apricots, or as they say in England, apricots and melons and sparrowgrass. But what have poor folk save sour apples and turnips, maybe? You did not satisfy yourself with herrings, nor with pickled mutton, no, nor with hard apples and turnips, neither, he reminded her. I was lucky, I had the master's nod. But there are poor folk who do not serve the master, and they must go hungry. Not a sparrow falls to the ground, he began. But still they fall, she said quickly, and still they lie frozen upon the ground. And if the eye of your God is upon them, does that make the bitter dying easier? And is it not a shame to him and a disgrace? These matters are beyond your wits. And maybe beyond yours also, priest. Well, I was no sparrow to fall to the ground. I would look into the kitchens, and I would whisper to Meg or to Philip, bring me this or that hidden beneath your petticoat, and wine, bring me wine. And so they would do. The other servants did not like your daughters, he said. Well, it was no wonder. They did not like my girls before ever they suspected light fingers. For my girls were not easy to like. Margaret was sullen and sly, and though she kept her eyes cast down, men knew that she followed them with lewd thoughts. And those that had sweethearts or wives kept their distance, and those that had none kept their distance too, for she was one of these still women that drain away a man's strength. And so, for the most part, they shunned her, all except one, and that one we shall come to later, for he was the spark that touched the whole thing and sent it up in flames. And Philip. Her eyes, too, sought out men, but with her it was different, not downcast nor secret, a bold look that cried, come take me, and she, too, as you know, had her man and kept him faithful, a man other women desired, a fine, upstanding man, until she was done with him. If Meg was disliked, Philip was feared. That she, ugly as a rat, should have her man and keep him, was the top and bottom of the trouble. There were comely girls both at the castle and down in the village who wanted Tom Simpson and his fine farm, but he would not look at them. The thing reeked of witchcraft, they said, not understanding that some women, ugly though they be, have yet the wit to win a man and keep him. And so the servants would go with their tales to the housekeeper or to the steward or even to my lady herself, but since nothing could be proved, my lady would not listen. Margaret is a good girl, she would say, and if you mistake Philippa, then you are unchristian. There is nothing against her but her looks, and those she cannot help. Pray for a better heart, and she would make it up to my girls with a gift, so they should not feel slighted. So there they were, snug at the castle. Meg in the poultry house would bring me many a fat bird. Philip in the laundry would bring me a fine shift or a sheet, and both were nimble-fingered in the kitchen. And there was my lady of her Christian charity allowing no word against either of them. It is well said that the devil helps his own. Without lifting a finger, there was nothing I desired, but I might have it. And so it went on, my girls snug at the castle, and I welcome to lend a hand. All three of us living like fighting cocks. How sweet it was up at Belvoir. In the summer I would go, trudging the dusty road, until it began to mount and I felt the fresh wind upon my face. For though down in the village we might stifle with the heat, there was always, even on the sultriest day, a wind stirring up there on the hill. And though the cabbages in my plot might wilt and my onions straggle, thin and dry, the gardens at Belvoir were fit for the master himself, so green, so soft, the flowers blooming and the great trees in full dark leaf. Sometimes I would catch sight of my lady trailing her silks across the grass. She would beckon perhaps and pluck me a rose I might have, but never an apricot, that did not befit my station. Or she would tell me to ask in the kitchen for a mug of ale I might have, or cider, but never wine, that also did not befit my station. And thank you, I would say, dropping my curtsy, and bless you, my lady. But my thanks were grudging, fitting as I thought her gifts. And sometimes the children would come running. The little boys, he asked, his face all drawn with pain. Our little boy, she corrected him brightly. The other was a babe in the nurse's arms, and there was the girl too. She paused, she said softly, the little boys, I could never look at them without thinking, if I could offer them to the master. And I would picture it, the 5-year-old on his knees, acknowledging the master. But even then I knew it could not be. That child reared in a Christian house would make no willing convert, and unless a convert be willing, big or little, the master will have none of him. And so I would look at the child with longing, and I would look on the child with hate, but I would have worked him no harm had not the occasion risen to drive me. And the baby, I would look at the child at his mother's breast, and I would think, here is one for the sacrifice. Here is the child to offer that our harvest be heavy and our women fertile. And this child, too, I looked upon with longing, and I looked upon him with hate. But him, too, I would not have harmed, had not occasion risen and driven me. But most of all, I hated the mother. I hated her sitting there and suckling the child. She was not one of those, too fine to suckle, being simple in her way as any woman. And I would think, fool to suckle a human child when you might suckle a child of Satan. But that was envy, and I knew it even then. For to any woman, witch or saint, it is joy to suckle her child. But to suckle a familiar is bitter pain, and it is a pain that in the end brings you to your death. And so it came about that I hated the mother and the pretty boys, but I did not hate the girl. And that is a strange thing, for the little boys liked me well, the elder running to shew me his ball, or with the flower in his hand, and the younger crowing and jumping to come at me. But the little lady could not abide me and kept her distance, though my lady chided her, which did not make her any sweeter. And yet I would not have harmed her then, not by so much as a hair of the dark curls that flowered at her waist, because she spurned me. I admired her the more, because she was willful in her Willful, I read in her a willing convert. You were wrong there, witch. She shrugged. Willful, finding the lust of the flesh sweet, as she proved, not in so few years neither. Why should she not have made a good witch? The principles of good were stronger, and so we lost her. Praise be to God, Samuel Fleming said. And then you say you wish the child no harm, yet when you bewitched the little boys, you bewitched her also. No, priest, not then or ever. Witch, you lie, and for the first time he called her that name for which she had died. Ghosts cannot lie, must I tell you again? The boys we bewitched to their death, but the girl, for all our trying, we could not do it. We could not do it, she was free of us. But, and still he was not convinced, the same fits that killed her brothers, the same convulsions. Priest, there are those, and especially it is so with children, who must draw upon themselves all eyes. So it was with her, the eyes of all, high and low, must turn upon her. And so at one time they had, the only child and her mother dead. But then my lord married again, and the little boys were born. He loved his girl, but he loved his boys better, and especially he loved his heir. It was natural, and the little lady knew it. Do you think she enjoyed that, the proud and pretty child? She was the eldest child of the first wife. She could never forget that. And when her brothers fell sick, why then the matter was worse. She would play second fiddle to none, well or sick, hence the convulsions, hence the fits. So much poppycock. Like all children, she played her part well. And in the end, who knows? She may have come to believe in them herself. You can easily understand that, priest, you who are wise in the ways of men. And was she, he wondered, mocking at him? But her face was grave enough. And have you not heard of a child here and there who has played just such tricks and brought more than one poor soul to the gallows? And afterwards they have confessed their lies? Of course you have heard. Had the little lady been some common child to be brought before the judge, she must have confessed. That her fits were feigned, you may believe. I've told you we bewitched the little boys, but I have not said why. Yet the cause was good, so it seemed. Or so it seemed. Margaret once more. She came down from the castle, and white with her anger and her spite. She looked wild that day, and bitter with her shame. At last my lady had heeded the tales, and my lady had sent her away, shut the gates of paradise against my girl. Never look at me like that, priest. It is so hard to understand what the flesh pots of Belvoir are to us poor folk. And there is more to it than that. Those that work up at the castle are well thought of. To be turned away means disgrace. The day my girl was shut out from heaven, more ways than one, for certain it is. Had my lady not driven her away, Meg would never have become a witch. It was not her true nature. She would have married her sweetheart maybe or another and lived out the full span of her days. But why, I asked the girl. What have you done? Nothing but what you bade me. And what that is, she said, you know well enough. I brought you the food and the clothing, as you told me. And is that all? I asked. And was that not enough? Samuel Fleming said. My lady has plenty, Joan Flower tossed a careless head. Your girl was a thief, and you had made her one. He was angered by her lightness. It is not only for witchcraft a man may hang. Then she hanged for the sheep and not for the tail, which is some comfort, Joan Flower said. But I knew well that the lady would not send a poor girl away for helping herself to a pretty thing here and there. That is why I asked if that were all. Margaret said straight and hard, "It is not all. I have taken my pleasure here in your house, mother, with Pete and with others, and you knew it well. Life is short," I told her, "and we must take our pleasures as we may. This is no sin, but to be found out, there is your sin, and you cannot expect our virtuous lady to be pleased." "For my lady's pleasure I care not that." She snapped her fingers, and there was a wicked look in her pale eyes. It made me think that here, after all, might be substance for a witch. But I have lost my sweetheart, and better than him I could not hope to find. For he is one of the upper servants, my lord's own man, and he is a gentleman, almost. Almost, and they call him Master Vavasor, brother of Bulbasaur. He had his will of me, but he thought he was the only one. And indeed, he was the only one, I fancy. But lying with a man, it is a thing like eating bread. Had he been always at hand, I would have taken no bread save him. But he is often away in London or elsewhere with my lord, and now he complains because being hungry, I ate. So it is with men, I told her. If they go hungry, why then they must eat. But if we go hungry, we must starve. As for you, have you not wit to lie to your sweetheart? This almost gentleman has had his will of you, and who is to say different? No, I lost my spot. Pete's wife, she has been up to tell her tale, and she has told it not only in the kitchen, but to my lady herself. And they are at Master Vavasor's day and night, the women who have him for themselves, and the dirty louch that would have had me, but I would not suffer them to touch me. One may be hungry, mother, but no bread is better than foul bread. You have made yourself many enemies, I said. I have known it this long while. I have felt ill will blow upon us three like a cold wind. But for all that, I will go to my lady. Maybe I can coax her again. Margaret's heavy face did not lighten. Were she to ask me to go back, which she never would, I could not show my face up there again. Let us jump that hurdle when we get to it, I told her. But I was not cheerful, and my lady, kindness is strong, but virtue stronger. What did she say when she sent you packing? Little, but it was enough. Oh, she was quiet. You would have sworn it broke her heart to put me out. For all her softness, she's hard as stone. These virtuous women. With the virtuous, you must pretend to virtue. You must take your pleasures in secret. You have not done either. Well, it is useless weeping when the milk is spilt. Did my lady send you away empty-handed? I had 40 shilling of her, your 12th month wage. She has not behaved so ill after all. You may live well enough till you have time to look about. Wherever I looked, Meg said, her head hanging, I see nothing but disgrace. And that was true enough, so I held my peace. Presently, Meg said, she gave me a gift also. She sent it with me in the cart, the mattress and pillows from her own bed. From her own bed? It was a thing I could not believe. But even the most nimble thief cannot carry away a mattress unseen. I turned the matter in my mind, but could make no sense of it. At least you will lie soft, I said at last. Lie soft? Meg's mouth was bitter. Much, my fine lady, cares about that. Her virtue or her pride, I know not which, cannot endure to use what my body has touched, not though the mattress be cleansed with soap and water and by wind and sun. Here was new matter. I looked at her. I could not believe what I saw in her eyes. A fool she was, but surely not such a fool. She nodded. They caught us in my lady's bed. Were you stark crazy? I asked when I could speak. If you were in such haste, you and your friend were not the field soft enough for such as you. I was minded to lie softer for once, she said, sullen, and then, she said, I was minded to fancy myself in my lady's place. What is my lady that she should lie by my lord night after night? She said, sudden and spiteful, and yet heartbroken too. My lady is his wife, I said very sharp. Have you forgot it? As for my lord, he is chaste. Meg's hands fell open, and she fetched a deep sigh. Come, I told her, you are not so ill-favored that any fine lord might not take his pleasure of you. But not this one, never this one, my girl, Meg said, as it was and it was as though she spoke out of some dream. He is finer and cleaner and handsomer than any man. When I lay in my lady's place, my lady's bed, I said again, and even now I could scarce believe it. There is an old saying about angels and fools, and truly, only a fool would dare that much. Safe enough, Meg said, listless, or should have been. My lady was away, over to Haddon, I think. No one should enter the chamber once it was swept and garnished. But as ill luck would have it, a sewing maid came to take away a sheet, and so she shrugged, and now they have scratched up every tale about me. They talk, and there is no end to their talking. Up at the castle, down in the village, tongues wagging, I with no place to hide my shame. I looked at her close, and now I must believe the thing I had doubted before. When, I asked. 3 months or 4. Who fathers it? She shrugged. Vavasor or Pete, or some other, who knows? Be easy, I told her, for come what may, it is a shame you could not hide much longer. And it is a shame that may bring us good profit. How? She asked. You shall know in good time, I said. Samuel Fleming lifted his head from his hands and groaned aloud. That was arduous at best. All right, bro, that's all. I'm never finishing this book by the end of October. Goodbye.